What's up, everybody? This is episode 2 of the golden age of Broscience. I have a great guest with me today, uh, Leo, Bowtied. What is your handle? Bowtied
It is
HRT.
Bowtied HRT. Yes, sir.
Bowtied HRT. Awesome. So before we get started, this podcast is not sponsored, guys. Obviously, it's me doing this. But I want to give a quick shout out to two companies who I like a lot and who have products that I think are worth looking into. Elite Research USA, my preferred peptide vendor if you are a scientist, bro scientist, and that is something that you are into. Code 10AJAC, 10AJAC, 10% off. And then if you want to make a big health purchase and just spend some money, I love my sauna from High Tech Health. I've had it for 3 years. I use it weekly. Sauna is fantastic. I don't think I need to expound on the health benefits, but call them on the phone, tell them Ajax sent you, and they will give you a deal. So without further ado, let's talk to Leo, since I know everybody wants to hear from you. Leo, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, brother. So I'll give some context. So I don't know when you first got on X exactly, but obviously you have the bow tied handle, and then I started noticing obviously your posts where, and you're in, we're in both in a group as well, like the biohacker group, where it was obvious immediately, like this guy has an incredible depth of knowledge with human physiology, with hormones, with metabolism, with anabolic compounds, to a level that I think is almost unmatched. I've been in the fitness world my entire adult life, from 18 to 36, and you meet a lot of people that claim to be gurus and claim to have almost esoteric level knowledge on how things work hormonally, and a lot of it's this bullshit. Or it's people working off a very limited knowledge base, or they're just kind of scientifically illiterate and they learned everything from forums. But then I encountered yourself, and it was very obvious you have, well, number one, you're a very good thinker, like critical thinking. I know that you have a law background, but two, like you actually very clearly know the science to a level that most people don't. So like with that, context established, what got you into hormones and doing what you do?
I hate to admit this, but I will. So I've always been into chemistry, dorking around as a child and doing, turning water blue and evaporating things and making little distillation tents for purification and camping. So I knew that the scientific method and sciencey things were interesting to me, particularly chemistry. So when I was probably 14 or 15. So older guys, I thought they were adults. They were probably 20. Now is what I knew. Through high school and middle school, asked me if I would synthesize some cattle pellets into injectable steroids for them. I didn't know what injectable steroids were.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know what cattle pellets were, but I wanted to impress these guys, and they were cool. They're older, they're super nice, and I didn't think they were pulling my leg. So I dug into some research and I realized that these cattle pellets had trenbolone acetate in them. Again, I didn't know what that was, but I
Mm-hmm.
did some research and I realized that with a really simple extraction that I could pull the trenbolone acetate out of it and put it into an oil-based solution for injection. And so, again, I hate to admit that the statute of limitations was run, but I would make injectable trenbolone. And these guys were running it solo. They typically weren't running it with testosterone, but what they would do is they would run it with Deca or nandrolone
Mm-hmm.
decanoate and some B-ball, and it worked. It provided the methyl estrogen for them to. None of this was known. They just knew that it worked. We didn't know why it worked. So I made these injectable trenbolone vials for them, and I watched them get huge. And they several of them went on to become pros. Some of them were just amateurs, and some of them were just guys that wanted to look good at the pool. I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. So flash forward, I didn't use these compounds. I mean, I was a kid, and I knew that they were bad for you. At least I'll take that back. Let me strike that. I knew that young children should use these things. So being in the area and continue to look at it and read about it, it was something that I was very interested in, and I wasn't able to do them myself until gosh, I didn't run my first cycle until I was 35, due to my being a competitor in some tested federations for grappling arts and some weird MMA stuff around the world. So I had been in it, I studied it, I knew a lot about it. I was consulting to TRT clinics when I was in my early 30s and teaching some of the progressive doctors about how to do this correctly, because I just seemed to get it. I understood that a lot of the science around it, if you were, just wasn't true. They were keeping estrogen super low for men. And I knew that that didn't work because I talked to everybody I can talk to. And to this day, I still learn a lot from the consultations I do. Somebody who's never done a single speck of testosterone, I can learn something from them through the course of a consult. And there's always a place to learn. So I got into it really quick, and I'll go quickly through this. When I got out of law school, I was hired by YF Pharmaceuticals. Probably shouldn't say that, but that being said, I was hired by a pharmaceutical company to work on the WHI trial, which was the fallout for some really bad data that we got with regards to conjugated equine estrogens, where they had done a study looking to see what other benefits this estrogen would give to women other than alleviating their menopausal symptoms. So the data was kind of messed up. They found a correlation between breast cancer and estrogen therapy that was later proven to be not a correlation, but the government jumped in, stopped the study, and there were a bunch of cases that came out of it because women were rightly scared that their hormone therapy was going to cause them breast cancer. So I got to work on that case for the better part of 5 years, and I got paid to not only work in litigation, but to also read every single speck of literature that I could get related to any anabolic steroid, because in the discovery process, we had pulled every study and every piece of information that could possibly be related to this. So for the better part of 5 years, I got to swim in the medical data and combine this with my working with TRT clinics. I really started to synthesize my own theories or overarching theories of not only anabolic steroids, but TRT and female HRT. And it's just been going from there. So it started at 14. It really accelerated about the time I was 30, and I haven't stopped.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's that's incredible. I mean, just for the listeners who maybe are unaware. So I mean, you know this history better than myself. TRT has been approximate sort of like since like the 1990s. Obviously, anabolics have been used much longer than that, since you could say 1950s. Female hormones, though, female hormone optimization, HRT, that was considered obviously a new field. And I know the study you're referencing in the early 2000s, that essentially shut down all female HRT. I guess you'd say sort of like clinical, like a doctoral application of doctors working with patients. That largely shut down for like the better part of 2 decades, where there's still doctors that would do it, but it was looked down upon severely. That's why sort of like women's HRT is like behind that of men. Am I saying that correctly?
You're spot on. So female HRT was 30 years, if not more, ahead of male TRT, and we can call it all the HRT. Female HRT was 30 years ahead of men until the WHI data goof up, and then male TRT started taking off. And to this day, 25 years later, women are further behind than men in their HRT TRT protocols because the average physician is very conservative. And I'm not criticizing that, but the data was bad. It's bad now. It was bad then. Women need it as much as men, and it's shameful and painful that women were ahead of us with regards to living long, productive lives with full sexual and mental and cognitive function and avoiding osteopenia, osteoporosis. But that's turning the curve. Amy Killen is a physician on Twitter who writes extensively about this, and the doctors who are paying attention recognize that we all need HRT at a certain point. In fact, some of us could use it quite young, but to have women buffering for the last quarter of a century because of some bad data out of a study that was meant to promote more disease state management with at least estrogen or progesterone and some TRT. They just got wiped out. So everything's coming around, but the men have definitely taken the lead with respect to TRT optimization, and I'm hoping that the men taking it and their wives seeing their men benefit are looking deeper. I have more and more female clients. I can't be the only one who are seeing more and more women avail themselves of this and living longer, healthier, more productive, cognitively clean lives. It can be the fountain of youth. It's not dangerous, but it needs to be operated and administered properly. And there's just not a lot of physicians who are very up on it because there's not a lot of research that goes into it. Because if you want to call me conspiratorial, I'll take that moniker. There's no way to patent any of these drugs. You have to run it through a clinic and charge exorbitant amounts to make the money work. So it's a lot easier to give a woman an anti-anxiety or an SSRI That is to optimize her estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And because that takes some fiddling, and the allopathic model of medicine is just counterproductive to sitting down with a patient for 2 hours and asking them about every single thing that they're suffering with and how they eat and exercise and feel and their libido and the endless slew of disease states and mental states that can be potentially ameliorated with some benzos and an SSRI, which of course are a disaster. So we're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Oh, I have so many questions to take this in. I think again, it's like for the listeners, I'm very big on history, and I realize like most people don't know anything about hormones or how this stuff even exists. So I want to kind of throw it out there for everybody. I'll let Leo expand on this, but if you go back to the discovery of testosterone and then the synthesization of testosterone in the late 1940s, and then like the usage of anabolics, a lot of the research that does exist on hormones, testosterone and estrogen, that came out of studies, originally like it was in the sort of the world of sort of like female fertility or treating breast cancer. That's where a lot of it came from. And then in the world of anabolics, a lot of the anabolics that exist today came out of companies trying to create patentable versions of testosterone. So testosterone by itself, you can't patent. It's hormones. It's obviously it's endogenously produced. So like, things today, whether it's Winstrol or Parabol or Deca, or Trenbolone, which came from the animal world, that's where a lot of this stuff originated. And if you do want to add anything there, Leo?
Absolutely. So we have studies from I believe it's 1936. There was a very small study just of a couple of patients for women who had had bilateral oophorectomies where they had both of their ovaries removed. They were placed on testosterone prop, the short ester of prop, for full hormone replacement therapy. And it was crude, but at the same time, the study and the case studies seemed to indicate that the women did much better than having no estrogen whatsoever. And even though women aromatize a very finite amount with testosterone and the doses that they're given, it still provided some estrogen to alleviate vaginal atrophy and vaginal dryness and peri and premenopausal or perimenopausal symptoms. So early on, late 1930s, we had the ability and the understanding that testosterone was good for women. Now that got moved out of the way when we started looking at synthesizing estrogen, because there's this idea in the common understanding and even the medical community that estrogen is a female hormone and testosterone is a male hormone, and they're not. Women have more estrogen than men, and men have more testosterone than women, but we both need them, and we need them for optimal health, and we need them for safe health. If you were to put mine and your estrogen down on the single digits, we're going to become osteopenic. There's no amount of strength training and calcium intake and any other manner of thing that we would do to alleviate us becoming osteoporotic old men. Very quickly, we might be osteoporotic young men if we were to put our estrogen down into single digits for any period of time. That can be alleviated. You can reverse osteoporosis and osteopenia, but why would you do that? You break a hip on the way. So a lot of these drugs that you were talking about, the first promise that they showed was in treating breast cancer, because Masteron, for example, and Tren are really good at binding to estrogen-positive breast cancer cells. And I could go down the rabbit hole for a year on that one. We have a lot of people that think that Masteron binds to breast tissue and keeps the men from developing gynecomastia, and it doesn't. It doesn't at all. What it does is it binds really hard to estrogen-positive breast cancer cells, which we probably don't have circulating in our body. But one of the issues we have with these compounds is that they're virilizing. So a lot of the studies were stopped. Equipoise is another one, Boldenone. These were used for burn patients to help people regrow tissue really quickly under skin trauma. They work well. However, men can use these at high levels even, but women will develop mapulonization traits if they're not managed properly. So you have 51% of the population where the anabolic steroids are not great choices for healing. So when you remove half of the population, the pharmaceutical companies are not really incentivized to put a lot of data and study and research into it. For the most part, I mean, there are female drugs and there are male drugs, but the steroids just showed too much side effects for the women and not enough benefit for the men. Now then counter that with Anavar, which works great for everybody. So there are exceptions, but most of the really neat anabolic steroids that were developed really kind of ran their course in the mid 70s, where they just realized that it wasn't going to be the breast cancer compound. and the selective estrogen receptor modulators are coming out, like Nolva and Clomid, which work quite well to bind to those tissues and keep women from developing metastatic breast cancer. So it's been up to the bros, if you will, to do all of our N1 data and our collection of N1 data and trying to smooth that and making sure that somebody saying they're using trend is actually using trend, or somebody using equipoise is actually using trend. So at this point in time, these are the halcyon days. We can get good anabolic steroids, both for men and women, and we can, with a high degree of certainty, put together a data set where we can truly evaluate the true side effects with regards to renal and hepatic health and mental health compared to what pharmaceutical companies are ever going to do, wasting their money on this when they can't use these. There's no real incentive for a pharmaceutical company to put a lot of money into something where a lot of men are going to use for lean tissue synthesis for pool season.
True that.
It's just the fact of the matter.
The topic of I'm trying to I've got so many thoughts swirling right now. The topic of estrogen, I know for men, is very misunderstood, since like when I got into fitness, like my mid-teens, started reading bodybuilding magazines, but I've probably like half my friends are gassed up, geared up, dark side, whatever phrase you want to use. The belief in their 1990s, early 2000s was always on crushing estrogen. And then I know that's changed in the last 5 years, and there's various physicians that have spoken out against that and said that estrogen is cardioprotective. And as you're constantly telling guys, I know, like in our various groups, clients, like you don't want to crush estrogen levels. But my sort of conjecture for that is a lot of the dead bodybuilders in the 1990s who were taking anti-estrogens all the time. They're taking aromasin constantly. That was just assumed to be part of the cycle, right? You go on anything, whether it's testosterone or combination of things, you gotta get estrogen down as low as you can. That led to obviously I think I'll probably contribute to a lot of early deaths, a lot of side effects, a lot of guys where they have really poor cardiovascular health, really poor hepatic health. What was your perspective on that? Like when you were obviously you've been in consulting a long time. And it's
always been a disaster. I've been screaming into the void, and now we realize that if you want pardon my language, if you want your dick to work and you want to be excited about having sex and a high libido, your estrogen can't be in the gutter. The problem early on when you're talking about is the anti-aromatase inhibitor that we had that worked really well was letrozole. And letrozole it's just a nasty all-around compound. It's still used occasionally in bodybuilding because it will nuke your estrogen. And when you want to get on stage, if your estrogen's zeroed out for a couple of days, you're going to pull all that water up and you get that nice thick skin look for the stage. But there's really no place in anything other than prep to keep your estrogen low. And the low estrogen also can lead to very brittle joints. So we have a lot of older bodybuilders who kept their estrogen low for long periods of time just because they thought that's what they were supposed to do, who have absolutely obliterated their soft tissue joints. They're creaky and old. If you and I were to do an experiment, if we were to nuke our estrogen, we would feel creaky. We'd feel like we have sand in our joints. I mean, we really would. It'd be almost instantaneously. On the other hand, if we were to inject ourselves with some estradiol cypionate or something to that effect, we would immediately be PMSing. We would have all the high signs of PMS. We might cry when we're watching the Hallmark commercials. We might be drinking honey out of a honey bear at 3 o'clock in the evening. We're going to legitimately put ourselves into a very quick PMS. So what I kind of counsel my clients to do is to run their estrogen as high as they possibly can without getting acute side effects so that everything works perfectly, and then titrate that estrogen down or lower their testosterone dose. And at that point, we can get a good steady state because we don't need the amount of, I take that back. I'm a fan of super physiological doses of testosterone. However, if you're a high aromatizer, if you're overweight, if you're genetically predisposed to produce a lot of estrogen, then you may not be a candidate for running high test. And if you want to blast and you want to go on stage, then maybe testosterone wouldn't be the heavy backbone of your cycle and you would use other compounds. But for the most part, most men can take a good deal of testosterone, run their estrogen really high, have full libido, mental, cardiovascular health, along with everything else. I mean, the amount of things that work well with high estrogen are almost endless. And at the same time, the amount of negatives with low estrogen are about endless as well. So there's a balance, and everybody has a ratio. I'm constantly asked, what's the ratio? And the answer is, it's your ratio, Ajax. It's my ratio. I run my estrogen around 90, and most people, most people would have a limp noodle and would be developing gynecomastia at 90 with their testosterone levels at 1,000. But at the same time, if you can run it high, for the most part, you want to run it high.
Fantastic. So, I mean, we're talking about estrogen, taking a different approach to this, or just sort of just take a different direction. Obviously, you've been in this game a long time, and you have a law background. Obviously, you're a lawyer. What is sort of your first principle, like mental model of how you think through hormones and health and balancing this stuff out? Because obviously, with the body, we're talking about complex systems. There's multiple factors to account for. How do you think about it, and how does your philosophical methodology differ from the more error-prone, say, like allopathic traditional medical model?
I spend a lot of time with my clients. My average consult runs an hour and a half, and some of them run close to 3. Before I do a consult with anybody, I want blood work. And the blood work is not what we work off of, but I need to see organ health. And that's what a CMP and a CBC basically gives us gives us the baseline to make sure that if a patient of mine, I take the back, a client of mine, were to engage in a steroid cycle or TRT, and once somebody gets on TRT, they're always excited to try some Anavar or something to that effect. So I need to see, just for safety value, I want to see how their organ health was. With regards to their hormones, most men feel very good with their testosterone levels. And as we're fertility aside, we can get to that in a moment. Most men feel really good with their testosterone levels, somewhere around 1,200 nanograms per deciliter at trough. The way we get a trough reading is a traditional every 3.5 day injection protocol without being neurotic. That would be Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, something to that effect. So 100 milligrams on Monday, 100 milligrams on Thursday, which gives you nice steady state. And we have the client go in and have their blood drawn the day of their next injection. So you'd go in Monday morning, and that gives you your trough. And we're looking to see somewhere around 1,000 to 1,200. And then if the estrogen is high, not on the blood work, but if we can get granular and I give lists of high estrogen sides and ask my clients become intimately familiar with the high estrogen sides, once they get them, I teach them how to self-manage their own estrogen management protocols so they're not reliant on me moving forward. And it's quite easy to do. It takes a couple of weeks to dial in for most people. But once they got those tools, they don't need to go down to the blood lab to pull bloods to determine how to feel, because I know how I feel. You know how you feel. My clients know how they feel. And what's nice about the blood work is that they get in there and they can confirm their biases. But we do continue to test CBC, CMB, and if they're going to be drinking, and if people drink alcohol, I like to see a GGT as well so that we can get a full 3-dimensional view of liver health, because AFT and ALT you can look like you had alcohol and colitis and be just fine. You could have had a big steak the night before, or, a rough weekend in Vegas, and that doesn't mean your liver's falling apart, but we do need to see that third metric of the GGT. So I always recommend people do that, especially if they drink or eat a lot of rich, heavy foods. But as far as my overall theory, fire test, I've put it on Twitter and I'll stand by it, and I'll apologize if I'm wrong, but I don't believe I am. I think that we're going to see super physiological testosterone doses somewhere in the range of 1,200 to 2,000 nanograms per deciliter, as promoting all-cause life expectancy and reduction of all-cause comorbidities and death moving forward. I really do. I believe that from what I've read and what I've seen. And again, I've decades of doing this, and thousands of people with whom I've worked in the TRT clinics, all of their clients, when the physicians share their data with me. It's a unified theory. And there was keep in mind, there was a black box warning on TR and testosterone just a few years ago that the FDA had to pull, because there's no correlation between high testosterone and cardiovascular disease. But men were terrified for decades over that.
Yeah, I still see that question pop up constantly. I've been asked that many times, where it's just a persistent belief. Probably still a persistent belief in medicine that if you use TRT, you're going to get a heart attack, you're going to have cardiovascular disease, and you're going to get prostate cancer. That those are the real risk factors, and it probably will happen to you. And guys still believe that.
And doctors still believe it, because medicine is conservative, and I'm not criticizing the physicians, but physicians have medical insurance, and if they get outside of the allopathic model and they get outside of the traditional prescribing protocols and they get sued, it's prima facie evidence that they didn't follow the standard of care. So I have a lot of sympathy for TRT physicians and just physicians in general not wanting to go down the super physiological route. Now, there's some forward-thinking ones that are willing to risk it because it does not lead to increased cardiovascular damage. I mean, we're not talking 5 grams of testosterone a week, let's be real, but 200 milligrams, 220 milligrams, somewhere we getting to that range of the 1200 nanograms per deciliter at trough is almost universally well received, not only in terms of how they feel, but it gets you moving, Ajax. You can take a man with low testosterone, low drive, low agency, give him some testosterone, and it's not going to turn him into an alpha male. That's not how it works. There's no alpha in a shot, maybe Halo. But there's really no alpha in a shot. But if you feel better, you move better, you sleep better, you fuck better, you're probably going to be more apt to get up and move. And if you move, like Greg Bushin just recently illustrated, beyond any shadow of a doubt, walking is the fountain of youth. I mean, you could walk the length that a marathon trainer would do and receive all of the benefits without the wear and tear on your body that a marathon trainer would. So I'm really fond of getting people feeling good, and by doing that, not only feeling very good, but getting moving because they feel good. And it's a perpetual motion machine at that point. You feel good, you move more, you feel better, you move more, you lift harder. It all falls into place. So maybe testosterone on its own wouldn't be the best thing in the world, but very rarely does a man go on TRT and not change his lifestyle all around.
Well said. I mean, this is something that, yeah, like I said, yeah, we're both in similar groups. That the guys who finally will, take the plunge of going TRT properly, no one regrets that decision, and their description of their quality of life and their energy levels and just the zeal for living, it's a night and day difference.
It's as though the scales have fallen from their eyes, to use a biblical reference. It really is. They were blind and they see. And the insidious part of low testosterone is not only is it endemic today, is that you don't know when your testosterone is low because it doesn't happen overnight. So you just think you're getting older. I'm getting older. I'm a little flabbier. I'm starting to gain some weight around my hips. I creak a little bit, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, you're 40, your testosterone should be 300. You're not out of range. Well, you're not out of range, but the range has been done by the big lab companies. They're simply doing a smoothed average of a data set amongst the United States blood givers. So it would be like going to Somalia in the 1980s and taking BMI readings and saying, oh yeah, everybody with a BMI of 6 is healthy and normal. No, they're starving. So we're starving for testosterone. And even one with, and this is where I get a little controversial. If a man has a 400 nanogram per deciliter testosterone range in the morning at a fasted, the fasting doesn't matter. But let's say he goes in the morning, hasn't drank in a couple of days, and goes in with 400. He might look normal, but by the end of the day, he's probably at 100. And then his HPTA is going to trigger that night. He's going to squirt more testosterone in the morning. He'll be 400, but he's 400 one time a day for that test. And on TRT, even if we were to put him at 400 nanograms per deciliter, he's going to be 400 nanograms per deciliter 24/7, 365, which is ostensibly going to provide about a 400% increase in the ability of his body to uptake nutrients and synthesize lean tissue. So even minor TRT is superior to full-blown TRT, like I like to suggest.
Yeah, you make a really good point about the smooth averages where I've had guys contact me that they're on TRT and the doctor would not let it go above, say, 900 total or 1,000. Like they have a hard cap on it. Like that's it. We can't go higher. And then at the same time, there's this, this is more like a critical thinking, just fallacy sort of tyranny of statistics. The average levels of testosterone for any hormone, that's not indicative of function or quality of function. It's just a mean applied to obviously a large data set. It has nothing to do with how the person feels or is performing. It's just, okay, we took all the numbers, we crunched them. Here's the low, here's the high, here's the middle. So denoting the mean, or like that being the average of the curve as being like that should be best for your health, it's built on a false premise.
Yes, it is. And if you look back just 10 years ago, Quest, if I'm not mistaken, Quest top range for testosterone was 1190, and The low end, I believe, was 380. And if you look at it now, I believe on some of the cluster reports, you're going to see a top range under 800. And that's just been in the last decade. So it's not like we found something new. We've just seen that men have less circulating testosterone than they did 10 years ago. And I believe it's truly a function of not only our sedentary lifestyle, but I am absolutely convinced of the light aspect of it, of the constant blue light coming into the optic nerve and impacting the hypothalamus, pituitary, testicular axis, and down-regulating our testosterone production. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I don't know if we're ever going to get a study on it, and it's probably bad form to take a bunch of men and blast a bunch of blue light into their optic nerve to see, but at the same time, who doesn't live on their phone? I do 95% of my work, my consultancies, my reading, my research on my phone. As we talk right now, I've got the screen black, but if I were talking to you, I'd be taking in blue light constantly. And when we finish this podcast, I'm going to be bombarded with blue light. And I'm not about to flip my screen over to the all red because I can't see it. It doesn't work for me. So we need to be lookout for light. I know you're a big red light fan, as am I. And maybe that can countervail some of it, but at the same time, we all of this is in one, like we're doing on Twitter, like we're doing in your Telegram channel. We have guys that have the money to get testing and people who are really looking and feeling and interacting with others about how they feel and to give words to articulate that. And we're just getting more and more and more. I said at the Halcyon Days right now, it is the greatest time in the history of performance enhancement. And I don't mean getting on stage as a bodybuilder or running an Ironman. I mean performing with your family, being emotionally available to your children, to being ready to go out and mow the lawn and make your house look good, paint that wall that has been needing painting for the last 7 years, or that leaky faucet. Things change when you get your hormones optimized.
It does. On the subject of light, the thing that turned me on to the role of circadian health, or just the role of light in health, I remember this was years ago, and I can't name the specific study, but it's sort of bounced around like the bro sphere for a while. This was like probably the late 2000s or 2010s. But it was, well, I mean, some of the research actually goes back, I think, to the 1930s, but it was on solar radiation like exposures, like UV exposure, and increasing testosterone levels, which that's actually been seen for like almost, like I said, I think really 1930s. I can't remember the year, but you're looking around 90 years. And then there was some small, even though weren't clinical studies, you sort of like anecdotal studies, anecdotal cases of tanning beds increasing testosterone, which was like a transient increase, obviously. The tanning bed didn't boost it to 1,000 and keep it there. But the fact that light itself has a role on hormone endocrine production, like that was sort of the first light bulb moment for me years ago, of like, oh, like that does affect us. That matters, in some form that I'm not entirely clear on now. Like I don't know the full extent of it, but it does matter.
We could do an informal poll on Twitter today and ask people, have they ever been as horny? They might be sunburned and crusty and hurt and be running a low-grade temperature because of the sunburn, but have you ever been as horny as you are after a good day at the beach under the sun? Men and women both, and I don't know if it's the testosterone kicking up, but I have a high degree of certainty that it is not just the testosterone, it's an entire impact on modulating our hormonal system, everything from progesterone to estrogen to testosterone, and maybe clearing out extra that we don't need to have. Again, if we could get a continuous hormonal patch like we do with a CGM, oh my goodness, the data we could feed into an AI and get one of our brilliant AI engineers on Twitter to get this data together, because we all know that morning sun does well, but it feels really damn good to just lay out in the sun and bake. It just doesn't. Maybe, and I'm not convinced that the solar radiation causes the skin cancers that they say they do. I'm more convinced that the crap we put on to keep the sun off of it causes the cancers. I used to joke about that when I'm not kidding, AJ. It's not because I'm smart. I'm just the weirdo. I remember when my mother was flattering me with sunscreen when I was a kid. I used to joke with her. I'm like, Mom, this is the stuff that's going to cause the skin cancer. And I think we've seen some stuff to that effect, that sunscreens, some are full of cancerous toxins. Yeah, again, this is the bros are ahead of the time because we're not wedded to an allopathic model. We're suspicious, rightly so. And maybe we joke about it, but sometimes the dark humor leads to the truth of the matter of things.
When I was in Thailand during COVID 2020, I was in the sun a lot and it felt great. But I remember looking into that then, and I had never, I hated sunscreen. Just the smell of it felt strange on the skin as a kid. But I remember looking to the data, and there's other people that have popularized this now, far more than myself, that if you look at the introduction of sunscreen in the United States and the adoption of sunscreen and the incidence of skin cancer, they've both gone up. So, with the claims of sunscreen being protective against skin cancer, it's like, okay, that's a big claim. But somehow skin cancer is an all-time high. Now, is that the sunscreen specifically? Hey, maybe it is. Or then, I also said there's probably something to the fact that people both avoid the sun for most of the year because they're told the sun's bad for them. And then when they go out in the sun during summer, they go out for too long, they burn, they put on sunscreen, which allows you to be outside longer, but now you're getting an imbalanced spectrum of light because it is blocking out some of the rays. So now potentially you're taking something that is, beneficial for your health and turning it carcinogenic, along with overexposure. And then, maybe that's the real cause as to why melanoma has increased. But, there's complexity to it, of course. But the flat, statement of the sun is bad for you, block it out, that's just farcical bullshit.
And from a logical standpoint, I believe we were put here by a creator, and this Earth was created for us. I cannot imagine that the star that we circle is bad for us. It provides photosynthetic light for the plants that we eat, the plants that our animals that we consume eat. It would be a very cruel thing that the sun itself were a dangerous thing. But you're right, though, with the sunscreen, it's interfering with the wavelength, so we're not getting it purely. It's almost a corrupted version of the sunlight that we're getting if we're wearing a sunscreen. Now, I'm not asking anybody to go out and get burned, but man, we have anti-peptides like MT1 and MT2 that can very quickly accelerate your ability to gain that protective base tan without the sun. And I'm a big proponent of MT1 and MT2. I really am. For that very reason is that you can, my first experience with MT2, I'm a Fitzpatrick 1. I've got too much Irish and German blood in me. And I had been litigating for the better part of a decade and really had not gotten a good tan in a decade. So I took some MT2. I took 150 micrograms a day for 11 days. I went to one 15-minute tanning bed session, and I wore my boxers and I kind of pulled them up into like a bikini. It's surreal how dark I was, and I had this white stripe from my groin around the top of my butt. Still got the picture that was 15 minutes of light with the MT2 for 11 days. I had my base tan. Just as simple as that. I mean, I've been relatively tan since. My girl and I are accused of being sun kings and queens when people see us, but we live in Arizona, so we get the sun a lot, but we use a little bit of MT2 and MT1. And I will say this, that stuff stays good in the refrigerator forever. So I don't want anybody to feel obligated to blow through their vial. I've got some that's been in there for 3 years and it still provides that lovely nausea. Bring it in the MT2 and provides the quick tanning. Peptides are the brave new world in terms of performance enhancing. And again, I want to qualify that. When I say performance enhancing, I'm not talking about being a professional athlete. I'm talking how you want to perform yourself. It's a question I ask my clients. Where do you want to go over the next 12 to 16 months, mentally, physically, and spiritually? And that's what I try to provide my clients, because most of my clients are 35 to 65, and they don't want to be stage bodybuilders. They just want to feel better. They want to be more amorous with their wife. They want to have more resilience at work. They want to be able to deal with staring at Excel spreadsheets all day a little bit better. And I try to equip them with the tools and the pharmaceutical options that will get them there safely.
That's a great model to apply, since this question comes up a lot. I don't think you could call it biohacking world. It's more like the world of health enhancement of where do you start? Since there's so many options available, there's lots of things we can do. And the populations I've worked with, for my career, predominantly general population, predominantly average Joes, average Janes, people who want to lose body fat, that's obviously very common. But when you're trying to make sense of everything, identifying your top 1, 2, 3 health goals, quality of life goals, and then from that, okay, what are the habits we need to establish? What are obviously diet, exercise, the fundamentals, sleep, circadian rhythm, and then beyond that, what are things that are extra or that are peptides or that are hormones or just sort of the world of health enhancement? What could help us get there? And then you can start making decisions and sort of give things priority.
Absolutely. But the way I do the consults is kind of funny. You may get a kick out of this. So I get on the phone with someone and I've got a narrative of their health history, where they are, where they want to go. I've got blood work and I tell them to supplement that in advance if they have the bullet points. Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk about this. I was on the phone with a guy about a month ago. He wanted to talk about his hair and hair retention for the first. So the question I ask is, what's most important on your mind today? Anybody who's consulted with me listening to this podcast is going to remember those exact words. What's most important for you today? And we will get to everything. So don't worry about it. It's what's important right this second. And I had a guy the other day that wanted to talk about his hair for 30 minutes, which is cool. It's his consult. So we went through a variety of hair retention methods, some of which I had gleaned from Bowtied UM. I had a lot of respect for. He's an esoteric weirdo, and I love it. So I read a lot of his stuff. And so we had a red light hat on him. We had some topical rosemary, some micro needling, some AHKCU, and it was going to come down to about a 2-hour protocol to hopefully retain his hair. And then we determined after 30 minutes, it'd be a lot cheaper and easier for him to just jump on Turkish hairlines and get a badass sportscaster looking hairline. So then we moved into the TRT, the peptide, the macro timing, the increased metabolism, and went from there. So I meet my clients where they are at that second. I always try to make sure on a consult that I get people dialed in on everything, but if it's the hair you want to start talking with, let's talk about the hair and let's see whether or not that's something you want to do every night. You want to put the red light hat on and watch some TV, then, we can do that. But at the same time, there are easier ways to do it, but it's all about being personalized for each client and meeting them where they are and helping them accomplish their goals aesthetically, spiritually, physically, mentally.
That's why you might be able to infer. I have long hair. I care about my hair a lot, which I make no apologies for whether someone thinks that's vanity or not. But I know that's a very big fear, guys.
AJ, I do dirty things to have your hairline.
Yeah, I got good hair genetics, and I mean, full disclosure, everybody listening, like, Ajax, how come you're not on TRT or Ambox? I love my hair. Like until science delivers a form of testosterone therapy that I can say with 99% certainty won't cause any hair loss, probably not going to do it. At the same time, my testosterone levels are still, they're in the 800 plus range. Like I feel good on a day-to-day basis. But with side effects to testosterone or to TRT therapy, like how do you sort of alleviate guys' fear of that? Obviously, you have a variety of methods. You're extremely dialed in with like approaching all their health needs. But what have you what are some maybe cool things you've learned over the years that are not often shared?
Well, the estrogen is really key. I harp about it a lot. I talk about it a lot because that brings it around to something you said. Nobody ever stops TRT. Where people do stop TRT, and it's almost a fact and without exception, men stop TRT because they're placed on an anti-aromatase inhibitor that they don't need. So they go on it. They are a little fat. They're a little out of shape. And we make less estrogen as we age. So, for example, if a man goes on TRT at 40 and his doctor gives him a milligram of anastrozole once a week and he feels really good, he might feel really good for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of years. But then as he gets older and he gets leaner, because just by virtue of being on the TRT, 99% of men are going to lose some visceral fat. They're going to get leaner and they're going to make less estrogen. So what happens is their physician isn't testing for it. And very slowly but surely, their estrogen starts to go down. So in a couple years, they're not as horny, they're not as energetic, they're lethargic, they're creaky. And without testing that estrogen and modifying their anti-aromatase inhibitor intake, if they even need it at all, that's where we see people desist 99 out of 100 times. When somebody stops TRT, it's because their estrogen has very slowly but surely been placed too low for their higher testosterone ranging. So nobody comes off TRT if their estrogen is managed. So my big push is getting people's estrogen super dialed in to the point where once you get good at it, estrogen is that powerful compound. You're married. I don't know if your daughter's over the age yet where they're experiencing a monthly change in their estrogen, but
No.
estrogen is so powerful that it changes things. And this is not a criticism towards women. This is just a fact of the reality. I told you earlier, if we were to inject a bunch of estrogen, we might beat the shit out of each other and cry because we're watching a sappy commercial. And it just is what it is. Roid rage is not testosterone. Roid rage is unmanaged estrogen in young men or older men who are not able to deal with PMS because they haven't PMS. They've never PMS. It's a brand new thing, and men are bigger. So we might hurt things and break things, and yell and scare people. So estrogen to me, when you get really good at your estrogen management, I equip my clients with this tool if they want, is let's say they've got something really serious coming up with regard to the business and they need to be really focused on that and not turn the sex noise off. It's almost like a GLP 1, 2, or 3 where you can turn that food noise off. You can lower your estrogen ever so slightly and you will have razor sharp focus. So when I would try big cases like a murder or a kidnapping or something like that, that I knew would go on for weeks, if not months, I would artificially push my estrogen down a little bit because I didn't want to be thinking about how hot the court reporter was. I needed to be insularly focused on the job at hand. And then come the Christmas holidays, come the Easter, or when I'm going to go on vacation with my family, I will use some HCG or maybe pop a couple D-ball, just a couple, and push that estrogen up so that I'm absolutely, authentically more emotionally available and present for my family. So estrogen is one of the compounds that we really use to dial in how we feel emotionally. So that is probably my overarching hack, if you will, to help men really take control of their hormonal health. Now, I'm never going to suggest that somebody keep their estrogen artificially low for a long period of time, but for a couple of weeks or months here and there, absolutely, especially if you've got a lot of things to accomplish that you don't want to be thinking about, if you don't want to be overly emotional. But that being said, there are times to be a little overly emotional. The Christmas holidays, the holiday season, when you're going to be around your family. It is so liberating to have this ability. Now, you can't do it by the day. You can't say, okay, I'm going to be a robot today, and tomorrow I'm going to be a crying sex fiend. But you can certainly do it month to month. And again, I'm not suggesting that people would do this every single month, but it gives somebody who's well trained in estrogen management the ability to really dial in their focus, whatever that focus needs to be.
I don't think I've ever heard I've heard some guys in the bro community make that point. I've never heard a mainstream doctor or physician ever make the point about accounting for the decline in estrogen levels in men as they age in conjunction with TRT. Because I know that's a common complaint with older guys. They go on TRT, let's say at age 40, and they're 50, and it doesn't feel the same, and they don't know why. Like something has changed, but the dose is the same.
There are a lot of clinics, not as many as we used to see, but there's still clinics. I still have clients who are coming to me and they show me the vial on their TRT clinic and they want to move over to more of a DIY TRT. And I'll look at their testosterone and it's compounded with an anti-aromatase inhibitor. So it may work for you for a while. It may even work for you for quite a while, but eventually it's not going to work and it's going to make you feel worse than you ever were off of TRT. I'd never recommend anyone use an estrogen management compounded into their testosterone ever. It's messy, it's imprecise, and if it works for you for a while, it's only going to work for you for a finite period of time, and it's eventually going to probably run you off of TRT and sour you on the whole experience.
Yeah, I have talked to those guys. There are guys like that where I have a few guys in one of my other groups where they went on TRT and it was just like this terrible dosing. They went to a clinic, they were given, they basically handled the same prescription protocol for everyone. They're given a aromatase inhibitor, testosterone went up, estrogen got crushed, steadily, whether it was rapid or over time. And then the joints started to hurt. They could tell something was off. Obviously, there were side effects to having the estrogen. And then the experience is unpleasant where I just wrote this question, like, do I really want to be doing this? And then, their impression of obviously TRT is like, I don't think this really helps me or it doesn't seem to work for me. But again, they don't know why. And it was just poor practice.
It's poor management and it's a shame. And again, I'm going to carry some water for the physicians that they simply don't have the model broken up where they have the time to really get granular with their patients. And I'm privileged to be in a position to offer 2 hours with a client. And we go through everything. Hey, we're going to shit talk a little bit and we're going to get to know each other and be friendly and talk about some weird stuff. But at the same time, that gives me a lot of time to really explain to them that their estrogen management has to be done regularly. So let's say that a client comes to me and after the consult, I typically have them call me in about 4 weeks and we'll go over how they're feeling. And if we determine that their estrogen's high, not by blood work, but by symptoms, Then we'll put them on an AI protocol. And I get 3 or 4 texts every single morning. It makes my heart sing. Man, dude, I can't believe it. I woke up, I feel amazing. And then we have to make sure that we get that dose for them dialed in. And once I teach them to do that, whether they're running 100 milligrams a week, 200 milligrams a week, or they've decided to run a big blast of 500 milligrams a week, they have the tools to manage their estrogen. But I always tell clients, and I'm telling everybody listening to this, if you use an AI on your TRT protocol, every 4 months you want to stop taking the AI and recalibrate, because your dose of 12.5 milligrams of Robitussin every 5 days may now be 6.25 milligrams every 5 days, or it may be the same. If it's the same, it only takes a week to do it, I'll flip back in. But if you're not recalibrating it 3 times a year, you're going to eventually run, and taking an AI, you're eventually going to run your estrogen down. You're going to feel like shit, and you're going to think the TRT isn't providing the benefits of what it is. It's just your estrogen.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions people wanted me to ask you. Estrogen, this has been super illuminating, I'm sure, for many people. Something a question that comes up a lot, gyno, like the fear of gyno happening, and if it is happening, like what do you do about it? What is your approach to that?
So gyno is mostly, I discovered this, and I'm going to take credit for it. Maybe there's some physicians out there that failed to write about it, but gyno, I developed some gyno when I was running Masteron, nandrolone, and testosterone about 5 years ago. Let me take that back, 8 years ago. My goal was to pull 605 on the deadlift, and I wanted to squat 545 with 190 pounds. I got it. I did it with a lot of gear and a lot of periodization using Wendler's 531. It works. However, I'm not built. I'm an ectomorph. I'm not built for that kind of pushing. So those days are behind me. During the course of that run, I started to develop some gyno, and I was still under the impression that mast would provide some sort of protection against the development of gynecomastia. That's not the case. It will not alleviate or prevent or mitigate gynecomastia. So I started digging into the research, and I realized that gyno is a prolactin issue. That doesn't mean your prolactin has to be high, but it's always prolactin interfering or interacting with estrogen. So what I recommend people do is take a very, very small dose of either pramipexole or cabergoline. The reason I like cabergoline is that it's very quick, it's long acting, and it literally nips the gyno in the bud. So if you've got itchy nipples, they start to burn, you're feeling some development, you can take, I don't want their dosing out here, but a very small amount of cabergoline for just a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and take a selective estrogen receptor modulator like Nolva or raloxifene. Your gyno will go away. No one should be developing gyno. Now, cabergoline is cardiotoxic, but where we see the cardiotoxicity is in men and women who have taken over 200 milligrams of lifetime total. No one should ever have to take that much. So I'm cautious to recommend it, but at the same time, a milligram here and a milligram there throughout the course of your anabolic career is not going to do a thing to you. You can use pramipexole. However, Prami is a dopamine agonist, has to be titrated up and down. So you have to take it longer, and it's a lot fussier. And I'm much more concerned with my clientele being compliant, and weaning and titrating is something that not everybody has in their wheelhouse. So you could use the safer version, the Prami, meaning safer overall, I guess, if you will, or you can use a little bit of cabergoline. You will not get gynecomastia, period, end of story. DHT is not going to stop it. DHT is not going to reverse it. All of that talk on Twitter about DHT being the magic gyno reversal protocol is just so much bullshit. I think there's a place for DHT. I encourage people to experiment with it. There's a seller out there on Twitter that I've had files tested. It's the real deal. It is what it is, but I don't think it's what everybody wants to clap to everybody. I don't think it's what people are claiming, but it is not going to fix your gyno. What's going to fix your gyno is bringing your prolactin down, getting your estrogen a little bit lower, and it will mitigate. It'll go away. The best test for gyno, whether you're getting it if you have small children, is when you pick them up. When you get your hand under their butts and you pull them up next to you, like we all hold our children. When they rape against your nipple, it will hurt. And when I say hurt, it will hurt. I had no idea why young women, like at 11, 12, started wearing those silly training bras. I thought it was because they just thought they were cool. No, it's because their boobs hurt when they start to grow. So we're no different. If our boobs start to grow around the areola, it will hurt. They'll feel like they're on fire. So if you got a child, you pick your child up and rakes across your nipple and it hurts, you're developing gynecomastia and you need to address that. You can alleviate that completely if you want to be prophylactic by taking a SERM, particularly a Novadex, uh, prophylactically. I'm not a fan of taking extra pharma compounds or any compound for that matter that we definitely don't need. But if I were to run something that's prone to causing gynecomastia like trembolone or nandrolone, I might very well take 10 milligrams of Nolva every other day just to make sure that I don't even run into it, because that will bind with the estrogen receptors, which the prolactin interferes with and causes us to be more estrogen sensitive and can lead to the tissue growth. There's lots of ways to skin these cats, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to get fibrous tissue in our boobs that we have to have removed by surgeons, and making sure to choose a surgeon that knows how to resculpt the nipples so we don't have inverted nipples. That's something to do some research. So anybody who has developed pubertal gyno or hard fibrous masses behind their nipple that can't be reversed with the protocols I recommend, you got to have it cut out. There's no way to reverse pubertal gyno outside of going into having surgery. So vet your surgeon well. If anybody needs a surgical recommendation, I know probably the best guy, and I believe he's in Austin, as a matter of fact. Big,
Oh,
a guided surgery mecca down to this guy. He'll do it right. He'll resculpt the nipple. Got a lot of bodybuilder clients who, they got gyno because they didn't know what they were doing through no fault of their own, or they had it pubertal and they got super lean, 8% body fat. I'm like, oh God, I've got boobs. This guy will put your chest back together and make you look like you want to look.
the more you know.
I don't have a
Yeah,
clue. I don't even know this guy, but I know, but I know. Storfaclear 10 for gyno reversal. No, I don't know this guy. I just know that he's done magnificent work on some of the guys we all know on stage.
Yeah, that question was asked multiple people. Like I mean, you're the man for that. Gyno is something that obviously comes up often in the bodybuilding world, and I've had guys come to me after already developed, like, what can I do? I'm like, bro, I'm number one, I'm not the expert for this. Two, I don't think there's anything that actually works once you develop that actual breast tissue other than surgery. Like you have to get that done.
It's surgery. Once it's become fibrous and hard, it's set. There's no removing it, there's no reversing it, and there's no reason to take a pharmaceutical compound on top of it because it's just something you don't need.
On the subject of boobs in women, another question.
One of my
Uh,
favorite
well,
topics, Adrian.
Yeah, well, how could it not be? But female hormonal health and like getting women, we talked about that at the beginning of the podcast, but getting women dialed in, which is like, okay, we're gonna like optimize your hormones. But yeah, I can imagine that means different things. If you're talking about a 4-year-old versus a 50-year-old versus a 60-year-old woman, what's your approach there?
So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I treat with regards to, or I consult rather with regards to how do they feel. A woman can have perfectly natural testosterone ranges, and their ranges haven't come down like ours have on the graph, if you will, or the spectrum. However, again, blue light, sedentary nature, shitty diet, even if you're optimized, I've got some fitness competitors whose testosterone looks good and they don't feel right. So what we do with women, get them hormonal panels. We always want to look at their estrogen. So what we have women do is always pull your blood work at the same time in your cycle. Ideally, it doesn't really matter, but ideally stick to the same day if you have a regular menstrual cycle. If you don't have a regular menstrual cycle, it makes it a little more difficult. So what we're looking for is we don't want low estrogen. So if we see low estrogen, we're going to have to look at that first. So a woman that has naturally good high test and her estrogen 30 when it should be 300 or 200, she's on the path to osteopenia, osteoporosis, vaginal atrophy, dry vagina, I mean, truly ocular degeneration. So at that point, we may just simply add a little bit of estrogen. We could do oral, we could do a patch, we could do sublingual, we could do injectable cypionate, which I really like because it's 1 shot a week, and we can titrate that dose in, and the women typically regain all of their good function and feel better just with the estrogen. So estrogens are a prime mover with women. But women do really well with testosterone. And we talked earlier about trough readings. So if you were to take 100 milligrams of testosterone as a man per week, split up into 50 milligram doses Monday and Thursday, and have a trough reading on Monday, you're most likely going to be what's called a 4 to 6x multiplier. So I would be willing to bet, not a lot because there's some outliers, but you should be somewhere around 400 to 600 nanograms per deciliter at trough on 100 milligrams. So at 200 milligrams, once you get your multiplier, you would be somewhere between 800 and 1200 on a sixth. So if I take 100 milligrams a week, I'm at 600. If I take 200, I'm at 1200. If I take a gram, I'm at 6,000. It is linear up to 1,000 milligrams from just about any man. Women, on the other hand, their multipliers are somewhere between 10 and 50. So a woman on 10 milligrams a week of testosterone very well may come back at 500 nanograms per deciliter, and that's just too damn high. So this idea that we can one size fits all for women is even further away from what it is in men, and it's not even close for men as well. So I start women. I suggest that women, if they want to do TRT replacement therapy, somewhere between 3 and 6, maybe 7 milligrams of total testosterone per week, broken up into several Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or even everyday injections, and only using a short ester like crop or phenylpropionate, because if they start to crack their voice and they don't like the way they're feeling on it, they can bail really quickly and we can reassess the dose. I never like a woman to take cypionate, enanthate, or God forbid undecanoate, because you don't want to be stuck with that stuff in your system for 21 to 30 days and you want to bail. So the prop's going to clear in 3 to 5 days and you can reassess. So women with that huge multiplier range, we need to start them very low with a short ester and then get some blood work, see how they feel, make sure their voice isn't cracking, make sure all the bodily functions are looking good. And then once we get their multiplier is relatively set as well. So they can choose their own adventure. Under no circumstances ever do I propose any more than 21 milligrams of testosterone a week for any women, or have stage open class bodybuilder clamp females. They don't take over 21 milligrams. There are some that do, but mine don't. And some of mine have national titles. There's no need to take more than 21 milligrams as a female, even if you want to be a math monster. So for the average mom, the average perimenopausal woman, executive, housewife, 3 to 6 milligrams of testosterone a week will put her somewhere around 80 to 100 nanograms per deciliter. And as long as we keep her estrogen in good, solid, high ranges, the higher estrogen mitigate any potential virilization side effect for those levels of testosterone. It's extremely safe, liberating. It's, again, I believe it's cardioprotective along with the estrogen, and the side effect management is quite easy. I've I've never had a client who has not done well on a well-managed TRT, HRT protocol. Not one.
That is, that's probably the most detailed breakdown I think I've ever heard anyone give on that subject. Damn. Yeah, it's you just made me think of this is not like a client or anything, but it was a female bodybuilder I know, or sort of physique competitor. She as you know, maybe for the audience, but testosterone and fitness, world of competitive physique, it tends to be done very poorly for women. That's a very common like kind of horror story. Girls just get told to take way too much by coach, way too much Anavar, way too much of anything. They end up with virilization. Obviously, it's not reversible. But she was an unusual case where she was given way too much. She was started in sort of like the highest dose possible of Anavar that you start a girl on, and then took more. And she had incredible muscle building results. And she didn't get any virilization effects, but she got horrific cystic acne, which took like 6 months to resolve. And I remember I was talking to her just at an event we were at, and she's kind of telling me what happened. I'm like, why did you take that much? She's like, that's what the coach said. Yeah, and her testosterone levels, like when she got a measure, they're like 800 total, just absurdly high, absurdly high. I was like, what the hell? And like, but her voice was fine. Like wasn't growing chin hair, like voice was fine, but her skin was just like volcanic. And she can't come off it obviously, and it took a long time for her skin to get healthy again. But it's just like another example where, yeah, that was an unusual case. But like I've encountered that so many times over the years where girls get told to take too much, and then like the coach is like, "What's your actual approach to giving them testosterone?" They don't really have one. It's just like just take this dose. Like, what does that do in the body? I don't know. It's gonna help build muscle. Like, good enough for me.
You got my blood pressure up about 40 points. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of women who have been abused by their coaches, and I don't know one who had been willing to call their coaches to take them to the mat on this. There's a degree of embarrassment and Stockholm syndrome associated with people who are abused, and there are predators, a lot of predators in the coaching area, but not the women coaches. It's the boy coaches that predate on these women. They fuck them up. and then they cast them aside, and the women are horrified, they're virilized, they've got irreversible side effects, and they're embarrassed to bring publicity to these monsters, and they just move on to the next girl and move on to the next girl. You've been in the industry a long time. I'm sure you rub into girls. They won't name and claim their coaches who screwed them up, but the coaches just throw the kitchen sink at them. And, got open class national champions who don't take more than 21 milligrams a week and don't virilize. If they're lucky, like the girl you were talking about, her estrogen was most likely nice and high, which kept her from getting the bad virilization side effects. But the cystic acne, her SHBG, was probably down in the low single digits, and it just didn't work well for her. And she may have been prone to it at the same time. Nobody wants cystic acne. There's not a person in the world who seeks that one out. That's not the side effect we want. So women need to be very careful. They don't need to be afraid of it, but at the same time, I don't like clinics putting women on pellets, because those pellets can and will release differently by the day and by the insertion. So every administration of a pellet is going to be different. They're not going to be able to get any quick and clean, steady state. So the goal is testosterone prop for the first year until they dial in their dose. And once they dial in their dose, then they can switch over to a cypionate, a longer ester, so that they don't have to inject several times a week. But most women don't mind. We're talking a subcutaneous injection somewhere around the girdle with a tiny little insulin syringe, and that lets them titrate that dose beautifully.
On kids, you get on? My kids just came to the room, and yeah, Dad's on a podcast. Dad's on a podcast. Yep, I'm talking to the people. Yes, I'm talking to people. We'll see you guys later.
You gotta love them.
Okay, we're back. I'm just gonna leave that in.
I do want to. This is a good point for me to jump in and say, without qualification, no woman should be taking nandrolone. Nandrolone looks really good on paper as far as the androgenic anabolic ratios. So a lot of men in good faith are like, well, shoot, I did the research and this 36 androgenic ratio looks fantastic for women. That's not how it works. Women are not rat levator cells. They're not rat prostate cells. And that's where we get those ratings from. And we compare it to testosterone with the anabolic response and the androgenic response. Women in nandrolone, if you wanted to transition someone, if we got into transitional medicine, testosterone is the second choice for virilization. Nandrolone is the first choice for virilization. Almost all women will get irreversible virilization on nandrolone compounds, whether that be the short or the long esters. So I want to make it known that I say that there is zero place for nandrolone in any woman's stack. And there will be some girl who will say, well, I used it with just fine. Well, that's great, but the others can't, and you can't reverse these side effects. Most people don't want to shell out $10,000 for electrolysis. You can't have your vocal cords shaved down. I mean, it's an absolute mess. Women can use just about any anabolic under the sun without long-term effects except for nandrolone. Even tren, and I'm not pushing tren, but nandrolone is the great virilizer. Like I said, if a woman decided that she just wanted to be a little more masculine, meaning wanted to have some fur, wanted to have a husky voice, wanted to put on some mask, get some wider shoulders, and wanted to kind of bend her gender a little bit, nobody can transition, let's be real. But at the same time, if somebody wanted to be a little more masculine, a woman could do that if she were of the age. She could use the nandrolone. But at the same time, outside of that particular goal, no woman should be taking nandrolone. You got Anavir, T-ball, equipoise, testosterone, even trend. You've got anadrol. All of these compounds can be safely used by women under the supervision of somebody who knows what they're talking about. But nandrolone is an absolute unmitigated disaster. And I'm very, very strict about this, not only with my clients, but there's a famous podcaster, I'm not going to name names, make the point here, who's well respected in the podcasting field, if you will, who did an entire woman, female hormone, TRT, advanced cycle podcast about 8 years ago. And he was extolling the virtues of nandrolone. I tracked that fucker down and I got it removed. I laid out my case, and he was cool enough to pull it down, but who knows what kind of harm was done, because we do trust our online influencers, if you will, especially if they've got a big platform. So nandrolone is an absolute no-no for women. If anybody takes anything away from this entire podcast, No nandrolone for women unless you're trying to become more masculine. Period. End of story.
I mean, that's as clearly shed as could be. Another topic that comes up with a female optimization, thyroid hormone. Like that's super, as you know, super common. Like, what do you do about thyroid? Is thyroid low? Is
Thyroid's
subclinical
great.
hypothyroidism real?
I love thyroid. Here's the thing, is that a lot of women were hyperthyroid when they were young, but how many girls are going in and getting their T3 and their T4 and their reverse T3 checked at 16? Nobody. None of us did this. So a lot of women will be hyperthyroid, if you will, just a little more. Think of the track and field girl who's super thin and she can eat all she wants and run, you know this girl. We know all these girls. Then they get older and they get to about 30, 35, and that 35 shift seems to hit everybody, men and women. Remember, 35 is middle aged. Nobody wants to think of it that way. And it's not a death sentence. It just means you need to start taking precautions to set up for the next half of your life because most of us don't live to 150 to non middle age. We don't have an average life expectancy of 100. So at 35, I believe everybody should start considering what they're going to do to set themselves up, really set themselves up for the next chapter of their life. With regards to thyroid, I don't like leothyroxine because leothyroxine simply is a compound that converts to T3, and the T3 is what we like and what does things for us. The reason doctors don't like to prescribe T3 is because of compliance, and compliance is a big issue with all patients, men and women both. People are busy. People don't like to do a lot of administrations of compounds, and if compliance isn't followed, you're not going to have good results. But if I can have my way, a woman or a man, both, women and men both, if they were to get themselves some either liquid, aqueous, or alcohol-based cytomel and try a couple of micrograms in the morning, a couple of micrograms in the afternoon, sometimes the thyroid, the addition of that T3 just pulled everything together. It's like the glue that holds the TRT, HRT optimization together. However, it requires some consistency of dosing because the half-life on it's very quick. Doctors will say, and this is where I roll my eyes, doctors will say, don't want to give you cytomel because you can become hyperthyroid. That's like me saying, hey, Jack, I don't want you drinking a beer tonight because you might become drunk. Well, yeah, you might become drunk for a couple hours, but you're not going to become irreparably drunk. So if you take a woman or man and you tell them, swallow a little T3, a couple of drops, or crush up a pill or quarter it and try it in the morning and then maybe one in the afternoon and see how you feel. Oftentimes that brings it together really well. And you need to keep with that. I mean, if you miss a day, it doesn't matter. You're just going to feel as energized. Everything's not going to feel as dialed in. But you're not going to develop hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is simply a disease state induced by the extra T3 for a matter of hours. You might get a little jittery, you might be a little sappy, but you can titrate that dose down. That's why I really like if people are going to use it, but they look for an alcohol suspension so that they can take 2 drops, 4 drops, 20 drops, and really get that dose dialed in and see how they feel. And then let's say they end up with 25 micrograms a day that they really like, then they could get themselves a prescription for Leo, not Levo. Levo's the one I don't like, I apologize. They can get the cytomel, and then they could just crack that pill into quarters and take the 25 micrograms in the morning, maybe another half in the afternoon, and self-manage their thyroid protocol. So you're not going to blow your thyroid out by doing this, but you could take a little more, and if you take a little more than is necessary and you get the jitters, then just dose back the next day, just laying back a little bit. But doctors are really concerned about doing this, rightly so, because they don't want their clients on a protocol that they're not going to see for the next month, and the women come back and they're like, I was a freaking mess. They're like, I'd had 50 cups of coffee every day. The goal is to equip patients, equip the clients with the tools they know, the side effects to be on the lookout for, so that if they overdo it, they just stop and pick up the next day at a lower dose. But thyroid's a big one, really big one. I like Armor. I like the T3, T4 combo. It works pretty well, but at the same time, compliance and the finance is key, and we need to be willing, if we really want to optimize our hormonal protocol, our health, performance, and longevity, anti-aging protocol, we have to exercise some agency. And one of the first things in exercising that agency is getting your hormones optimized so that you feel good enough to put the energy into doing this.
You just answered all my questions. I was about to ask about the Armor thyroid, and then in the context of addressing thyroid along with estrogen levels and everything else in the whole cascade.
It all comes together. Thyroid's one of those things that I'll be the first to admit. It's one of those things that I've really just started fiddling with over the last 5 years. It wasn't something that I was doing 20 years ago, and
Mm.
we've seen some miraculous changes, almost like people being raised from the dead. I don't want to be too dramatic here, but a woman with or a man with inoptimal T3 levels, you can squirt a really squirt a little bit of T3 and they're up. They're moving forward. All the life, the color comes back into the world. So thyroid's a very important one. And again, with the caveat that if you overdo it, you're most likely going to feel like you drank too many monsters. But it'll pass. It'll pass within the day. It's excreted very quickly. And then just make sure you don't take that much the same day. Take a day off and come back at half the dose and work the way up. Work your way up again. I'm really big in the aqueous solutions or the alcohol-based solutions for Cytomel until you get your dose. And once you get your dose, then you can procure yourself a tablet and either half it or quarter it or crush it and turn it into a suspension for yourself. And you can get that perfect optimized dose. It's invigorating. It's liberating. It helps you feel this agency in your own journey when you start to play around with these things safely and understand the side effects that come along with these. When I say side effects, I'm not talking terrible side effects. I mean, it sucks to drink too much coffee, but at the same time, you shake it off, come back the next day, come in at a lower dose, get that T3 optimized, and you'll feel great. It's the glue. It's the glue and the icing on the cover of all of your hormonal optimization.
Hmm. Yeah, thyroid is. Yeah, I get asked about thyroid a lot, but like you have way more experience than I do with this. But clinically, there are books talking about hypothyroid conditions going back 1970s, but it doesn't seem to have the same level of research that's been applied to it as, say, estrogen or testosterone or the sex hormones. And you can ask 10 different doctors, functional doctors that address it, and they're all a bit different in their approach.
We just don't know. And I'll go back to what I've been saying since I started doing this recording. Physicians don't have time to fiddle and explain all of the things that I'm able to explain or you're able to explain on a consult and really dig in and ask lots of questions. What do your calories look like? How do you eat in the morning? Are you eating 4 eggs in the morning? Or are you doing egg whites and whey and fruit and supercharging your metabolism? Where's the energy lack coming from? Is it your diet? Is it messed up? Are you putting logs on the fire in the morning of the coals of your metabolism, expecting to get an immediate boost of energy? Or are you throwing twigs and pine cones on there, i.e. carbs and protein in the morning and supercharging that metabolism? All these questions need to be asked, but how many doctors have any training in diet alone? Much less fiddling with other people's diets. I'm a big proponent of what I call macro timing that is highly underused in the bodybuilding community. And I'm not sure why. I don't want to throw anybody in the bus because I get a lot of my information from the experts out there. But ultimately, you get up in the morning and stay off the fat, plow a bunch of carbs, simple carbs and protein in the morning without any fat. You will supercharge your metabolism. You can most likely bring in another 400 or 500 calories overall. This is not a criticism of CICO, but if you can raise your TDEE by supercharging your metabolism in the morning with some carbs, meaning sticks and pine straw, then you can eat more because you're going to be burning more. So I've got a lot of my clients on macro timing and they're blown away. They're like, wait a minute. You're telling me not to eat 1,200 calories a day, but to eat 2,000 calories a day and I'm going to lose weight? And I said, absolutely. As long as you feed them right and lay out, don't eat a bowl of rice before bed and you gotta sleep like shit. Let's eat right. Let's time this stuff around. And I do tell people, don't be neurotic. If you want a bowl of rice before bed one night because you feel like it, go for it. But for the most part, keep your carbs in the morning, protein in the morning, fats and carbs and protein throughout the afternoon. In the evening, longer burning carbs, but easy ones, broccoli, vegetables, good lean meats, and stay off the bowl of rice. That one little hack alone will change people's metabolism, give them more clarity in the morning. And this idea that we have to eat, and don't get me wrong, I love a pre-workout shake full of some thickly dextrin or some maltodextrin, a bunch of fruit and essential amino acids. I love pushing them. But that being said, if I get a bunch of carbs in the morning, I got plenty of energy in the afternoon to work out.
I'm glad to hear you say that. That's something that John Meadows, he was one of my mentors, and I worked for him for about 2 years. He was always very big on that. And then if you go back later to 1990s, Dunter Tudell, where he would advocate for carbohydrates in the morning, really is high carbohydrate intake. and having a hard carb cutoff later on in the evening, like by 6, no more carbs. And that was in the context of making sure your gains were lean and avoiding unwanted fat gain. And nutrient timing wasn't really taken seriously, I think. Well, certainly not by medicine. Still not taken seriously. But anyone in like the bro fitness world, it has an effect. Even in the world of also sports performance enhancement, the carbohydrates for performance. I know Noah on X has talked about this a lot, where it's sort of like the PD community, front-loading the carbohydrates, taking advantage of the Randall cycle flexibility, and then also insulin sensitivity is highest in the morning, and it goes down over the course of the day. So just that factor alone, like what's the best time to eat carbs? Morning time, to maybe mid-afternoon, and then you taper it from there.
I wish more people were saying what I know people are, but this is not commonly known even amongst some real good pros. I get clients that come from excellent coaches who have their clients on a 1,200 or 1,500 calorie cut, and I'm thinking, let's add 600 calories in the morning of pure quick burning carbs and get this burned off. Let's get that fire stoked up. You can eat more. And they're like, Trace, I'm gonna totally gain weight with those extra calories. And you're not. You're gonna boost that metabolism to the roof.
Yeah, I was just writing an article about this. Like the question of like, can metabolism be increased? That in itself, like, can you actually increase your basal metabolic rate or certainly your TDE? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I always find this bizarre where it's like, okay, let's say like clinical hypothyroid, right? Like your thyroid is legitimately low, right? If it's a doctor, you come in, patient comes in, thyroid's way too, thyroid, they run the lab test like, oh, wow, all these numbers are, on the bottom range. That person's going to complain about unwanted fat gain and inability to lose weight. Like that is real. That does happen. So it's like, okay, so we know thyroid affects metabolism.
Indisputable, no doubt about it. CO and TDE are facts of thermodynamics.
Yeah, so like we know that affects metabolism. We know hormones affect metabolism. That metabolism can be increased or decreased, depending upon your hormonal health. So why is it insane to think that when you eat could affect metabolism? Somehow that's like an out there concept.
I use the analogy as follows. It's not perfect, but let's say you and I go camping. We got a big old fire. We're dancing around it like wild men and go into our respective tents, wake up in the morning, and the coals on that fire are still hot. The metabolism. If we want to get that thing raging, we don't lug a big ass log on it. What we do is we put a bunch of straw, pine straw, twigs. That's the carbs. We get that fired up. Then we'll throw a log on it. The log is the eggs, the whole eggs, the heavy meat, the ribeye. That's going to give us power and energy later in the day. So macro timing is key, and it's underused. And I love to be able to tell somebody, you don't have to feel like death on your cut. You can eat more calories. You'll burn them off just by virtue of the timing of the calories. And they feel better. You don't feel hypoglycemic all day. You don't feel like shit on your cut. I mean, don't get me wrong, cutting stage prep is brutal, but it doesn't have to be as brutal until the last couple of days. But you don't have to suffer for months into this stuff. You can eat more than you think as long as you're stoking that fire in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, raising metabolism over time is entirely possible. That's something that for people when they're dieting, let's say for the first time trying to get really lean, it's not a mistake, but like your metabolic start point sort of determines your end point. If you have a completely unstructured diet way of eating, like you track nothing, like this, when you eat is always changing, and then you want to get to single digit body fat, like, okay, you can get on a meal plan, absolutely, like we can try to get things dialed in that way. But let's just say your average, let's say let's say your TDE is 2,800. You only have so much room to work with, versus if you were to spend 6 months to a year eating at the same time every day, front loading your carbohydrates, obviously training regularly, looking, getting blood work, hormones, all that stuff, optimized. And then you can get your metabolism up. Your TDE is 3,500, 3,300, whatever, somewhere in the mid 3,000 range. People, I've done this with people. I have friends that have done this. Like there's good coaches that do this with their clients. You can raise metabolism over time where you are burning more calories on a day-to-day basis. Then when you go to cut and actually diet, you have so much more room to work with your actual deficit. And you're not going to you don't need to drop down to 1,200 calories to get to single digit. You can get to that, even the 2,000 range, like you're still losing body fat. Maybe you drop it to 1,800. Yeah, and of course, there's always exceptions. Like, there are lots of pro bodybuilders. They'll go down to 1,000 calories to get stage ripped. But we're not talking about getting down to 3% body fat with peeled glutes. This is getting down to just 8-9% range. It's so much easier when you've developed that metabolic fire versus just starting from zero where everything's a mess.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of people, you and I are on the channel together. We see a lot of people on Reddit, TERS, SEMA, who legitimately feel like shit because they're not hungry. And I encourage every one of them, get up in the morning, make a shake with some blended fruit, maybe some blended rice, put some egg whites in there. Don't whip them because they'll turn into meringue and then you got to eat it with a spoon. But ultimately, get some clean, fast carbs. And they can be just, you can squirt the honey bear in there, put some honey in there, whatever you like. If you like sweets, enjoy it. I mean, don't go ham. Don't have 1,500 calories of sugar, but I like what the Peters are doing in some respect. Again, I take my points and my science from the weight of everything that I read. And God, Fitness X is amazing because there's some wackos out there, but man, even the wackos have some good stuff to share sometimes. Hell, I'm one of the wackos. I love it. I love that we can parse out and we can do our inline testing and that we can ask other people who are doing it and see what's going. We're moving forward. The needle is pinned over to the right now. It is fascinating and it just seems to be going further and quicker every single day.
Yeah, even the schizo accounts will have certain gems, or they'll find some a paper article that probably no one has looked at in 4 or 5 decades. Like, oh wow, that's actually an interesting extrapolation. Yeah, I know the GLP-1 stuff. The guys, girls using Retta or even tirzepatide. Like, you see me yell at people about this probably every single day. You still have to follow a structured eating plan. Otherwise, you just undereat, which is really where the lean mass comes from, the loss of lean mass. It's not the compound per se. It's just you're not eating enough calories and the carbohydrates. Like when you have better insulin sensitivity, because it is doing that for you, and you have better nutrient partitioning, you want to eat carbs. Like it's kind of like one of the paradox of it. It's like, okay, I might go on this compound to assist with body fat loss, but at the same time, now it can shift me more towards a carbohydrate-rich diet, which maybe before I could not have done.
Yeah, carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are how we gain lean mass. I mean, presumably we've got enough fat to maintain metabolic and hormonal function, 55 grams a day, 50 to 55. We need that. Everybody does. I believe that to be the fact. Protein, zero point 0.8 to a gram of mass is sufficient for just about anybody. You can take more. I mean, you're not going to hurt yourself with more, but ultimately you want to gain weight, push the carbs. You want to lose weight, drop the carbs. But at a certain point, you don't have enough carbs to feel good and get the gym session in. So if you need to get those extra carbs, stick them in the morning. Let that high insulin sensitivity do its magic, and you can put some carbs. I mean, it's not 100 grams. I take it back. It's not 100 calories of carbs. I mean, maybe 400 grams of carbs. I've been blown away when I'm losing weight by eating more calories as long as I'm being really religious about the timing. And it feels good. I got more energy. My brain works better. It fires better. I'm more motivated to lift. I've got more power in the gym. It's lovely all around. I mean, caloric restriction is key, but if you're destroying your metabolism on the way down, the body is a very sophisticated system and it's going to start being sparing. It really is. It's going to slow your metabolism down. We don't want that. We want our metabolic health to be on fire.
Yeah, well, this is one of the funny points when people ask the question, let's say, like, how can I have more energy? Which, there's lots of things you can do, of course, but eating carbohydrates and maintaining stable blood sugar levels, that gets like just wildly overlooked. Like for all the stimulants, nootropics, peptides, hormones, like whatever, it's like, oh, you want to have more energy? Okay, like have a carbohydrate-rich breakfast, keep blood sugar stable throughout the day, eat multiple meals maybe, uh, and you will feel more energized through nutrition. And so you need to eat food to not die. You can start there.
There's some easy hacks and there's some things that people could do with a little bit of meal prep. I like to blend rice and keep that handy where I can just spoon it out and make myself a shake with some rice and fruit. My favorite grass-fed whey protein. But even then, I want to make it easy for myself because I've got a lot to do, and I know that my clients have a lot to do. They've got children, they got families, they got multiple businesses. Sometimes, if I'm providing them with some obscure esoteric protocol that's going to take them 5 hours a day to comply with, they're not going to do it. They're not going to get results out of it. I need to meet them where they are, and if I can get them their energy levels up and they see the gains, then they're going to be more apt to comply with a more sophisticated program. But it's not, it's not rocket surgery, but it is compliance and it's consistency. It absolutely is.
For carbohydrates, I know you mentioned cyclic dextrin. So like the peri-workout concept of timing your carbs, like before, during, even after your workout. That, it's intra-workout. It's like the terminology for it. I think peri-workout, I don't think that term ever caught on, but it refers to like the whole training period process. Is that something you do for your lifting, where like you got your carbohydrate intake sequenced out?
I'm not as neurotic about it, but that thing said, my goal is to look good. And when I say look good for me. I'm relatively lean. I don't like carry a lot of extra mass. This season, I'm going to put on 10 or 15 pounds over the course of the winter because living in Scottsdale is nature's Ozempic. Anybody who can eat out here is really trying. It's just so damn hot. So I lose weight over the summer, and I keep my lean tissue mass because I do play with my hormones and I play with some anabolic compounds, but I'm not gonna lay out my protocol. But you can cheat with them a little bit to maintain that lean mass on less food. But that being said, I like to pack on 10, 15, maybe even more lean pounds over the winter, and I'm going to be extremely strict with my intake throughout the day. And I'm going to time it around not only my workout, but when I wake up and when I go to bed. And I'm going to do more like you were talking about towards the evening is the last meal of the day is going to have some carbs, but it's going to be low on the carbs. My carbs are going to be heavily front loaded through the course of the day, even if I don't work out later. I've got plenty of glycogen and nitrogen stores and carbohydrate stores to push hard 5, 6 hours later. But I do like an intra-workout drink. That's the only time I use the cyclic dextrin, and I'm not sold on it. I'm honestly not. It's expensive, and I'm not convinced that it does that much different than honey or just plain old $5 a bag maltodextrin. I'm not. I'm not convinced of it. I think it's cool, but at the same time, I don't propose that everybody spend the money for it unless they just like the bougie supplement. And I like bougie supplements, but I'm picky about which ones I'm going to spend my money on.
Yeah, I remember when the intra-workout craze was like at its peak, probably, this is probably 7, 8 years ago. And I tried to get into it, but it just got, like, a lot of guys did, but it just got ridiculous because I remember it's like, okay, you had to do the pre-workout, like, sort of shake, which, that could be simple. That could just be like, protein with instant oatmeal. Like, and that was easy. But then it got more detail of like, okay, we're going to do citrulline malate, and then we're going to do glycerol, and then we're going to do electrolytes, and then we're going to do coconut powder. And then you just sort of just keep adding things in. So now you got like 2 shakes. And then you got your intra-workout, which I haven't found anything for intra-workout that works as well as just like diluted Gatorade or even orange juice, like add a salt packet.
Yeah, with some salt. I tell you, orange juice is overlooked. Orange juice and some salt, my gosh, you can't beat it.
No.
I have not been able to beat a quart of orange juice. Plus, it fits really well in my gym bag because it's square. I like to take it. I look like a weirdo drinking an orange juice carton at the gym, but I don't care. I'm trying to get the gains. I want the energy. So yeah, orange juice, if you can do it and doesn't cause any gastric reflux, I'm down with orange juice. But pineapple's one of my favorite. I post about pineapple all the time. Got these things at Costco yesterday, these pineapple spheres or spears in syrup. And I blended some of those up with my morning Ghost energy drink. My God, that's my go-to, man. Love pineapple. And the pineapple provides some digestive aspects as well, which I appreciate.
Yeah, the bromelain in it. But what's the point of speaking? But yeah, I remember. So I just to wrap up the thought. I remember I got into like the whole peri-workout concept, which I believe in fundamentally. But it was so many products, right? Like, okay, I had this bottle, I had this bottle. I was getting the intra-workout product and like post-workout. This whole thing was probably a couple $100 to just go to the gym
Well,
and
and
lift.
you're a pro too. This is what you do for a living. So think about the compliance aspect for you, not the monetary aspect, but the tedium of the preparation. And this is what you do for a living. So think about the average guy that my client who's 50 years old, he just wants to get lean and strong, put on some mass, be better for his family. Orange juice and salt, man. Make some salt water, boil that up, pour a little bit of that into your orange juice, hit the gym and have fun. Don't overthink it. Now, if he wants to, if he gets the bug and he wants to do an amateur show, yeah, we're gonna go a little heavier because he's now committed to putting the time, the energy, and the money into doing something more sophisticated. But there's always a new thing under the sun, and I don't dislike them. I like novelty, but at the same time, the utility of these little tweaks are so minute. When it comes down to it, if you're lifting hard, if you're recovering well, if you're getting in your nutrients, you're 95% of the way there. You really are. Everything else is great if you want to get on stage, of course, or you want to run an endurance marathon or do a 100 miler or something like that. Sure, we need to. Now you're a professional. Now you're a professional. This is your job. But most of the people I work with, it's not their job. They just want to look good. They want to be better for their family. They want to perform better at work. They want to rip their shirt off at the pool for the first time in 10 years and flex some abs. And I respect that. I mean, that's kind of where I am. I'm 53 years of age and had my shirt off at the pool recently, and some guy came up and politely said, "You need more testosterone." And I thought, "Shit, I look like crap. I appreciate the compliment." And he wasn't saying I needed more. He was basically saying you're clearly optimized. It was a nice compliment.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, and I agree. Like the whole protocol, it got so complex. And at a certain point, I'm always A/B testing stuff. I had to really like ask the question: is this actually making a difference for like muscle gain? Of like, yeah, I am gaining muscle at an accelerated rate. No, it's not. I had a conversation with Stan the ferreting around the same time. Again, this was over a decade ago. I doubt Stan remembers this. It was like we saw each other in passing in the gym. Anyone who knows who Stan the ferreting is, he broke the 275 record for powerlifting, vertical diet. Great guy, fantastic guy, very intelligent, very successful. But it came up a conversation like, Stan, what do you do for like your workouts? Like, right? Like, what do you take? Yeah, nutritionally speaking, obviously he's on testosterone. But his answer was just it was so stupidly simple. And he said this before on podcasts as well. He's like, I just take salt. He's like, I just drink water with some sodium in it and make sure I got electrolytes. And that's it. That was it. That was the whole thing. And all the other nutrients, he's like, your regular diet should be taking care of all that. Why do you need to try to, go crazy in this peri-workout period? He's like, that you should just be eating throughout the day, healthy meals, getting your nutrients in, and then you go to train, just make sure you're hydrated. And that was all. Nothing.
Hydration is underappreciated, and it is so hard to be properly hydrated. I'll bet I answered 10 private messages a day where people have said, "Hey, I'm on TRT, not ready for a consult yet, but my doctor wants to bleed me because my hematocrite's high." And I look at their hematocrit, and it's like 1 point out of range. Sometimes a guy the other day lived in Denver. I'm like, dude, everybody in Denver has your hematocrit, and your doctor should know that. And also, you can't hydrate in 20 minutes. It takes hours to get properly hydrated. So before you go in for a blood test, or before anybody goes in for a blood test, if you're going to do a fasted test in the morning for your glucose reading, we need to get up hours before, and we need to get some salt, potassium, magnesium in and hydrate. We don't want to be swimming, but we need hours if you really want to get a good reading on your hematocrit and your hemoglobin. If you're dehydrated, your doctor is going to freak out and want to bleed you. Now, the problem with the bleeding is it works for about 2 weeks. You can't do a therapeutic phlebotomy every 2 weeks to manage your hematocrit. But what you can do, 9 times out of 10, is just keep hydrated. But man, we're dehydrated. We drink a lot of coffee. We drink a lot of Monsters. I'm a ghost fiend. But that being said, I like to keep some ridiculously nasty, salty potassium, magnesium water on hand, or pickle juice. There's another little hack if you like pickles. Plug some pickle juice. That stuff's magic. That'll perk you right up.
All right, I did that a couple weeks.
It makes your sweat smell terrible if it's garlicky. So there is that. Your wife may not like it as much as you like it. But that being said, it's like the food that bleaches out of our system. But pickle juice in a pinch, if I find somebody, if I were working on a construction site and somebody were to get, really not stroke out, but they got a bad case of dehydration, I mean, I'd just pound them full of pickle juice. That'll perk them up. I don't know if I want to put them back on the roof afterwards, but that'll get them going pretty quickly. There's some really neat hacks just sitting in our refrigerators, but most people don't think about this stuff, not because they're stupid. They just haven't thought about it. They don't live, breathe, and eat this stuff. They just want to feel good.
Yeah, I did that like a couple of months back. I was at the gym for a workout. It was one of those days, got away from me, didn't have much to drink, eat. First exercise, like a sea rose. I'm like, because I felt flat. The muscles feel flat. I'm like, I'm not hydrated properly. But the gym was right next to a grocery store. So I went in and bought a jar of pickles and just drank the brine with water. Yeah, not literally just the brine itself. And then I walked in the treadmill for 20 minutes, felt better. Training went great. It was that basic, that easy.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should, if you look back in history, in the civilized world, we ate a lot of salted food. I mean, a lot of salted food. Our food was extremely salty. So I'm of the opinion that, barring some sort of tangible issue that you can see in blood pressure, these are major, we should eat our food. We should salt our food to where it tastes good. We shouldn't be laying back on the salt. Salt is biblically clean. It's a good thing. It is one of those pillars of life, if you will. And we shouldn't shy away from salt, barring, high blood pressure and things of that nature that potentially too much sodium can add to us. But most of us are salt deprived. And salt, full well what salt does for our metabolic and synaptic processes. I mean, salt carries with every electrical system in the body.
Yeah, I always tell everyone that. Since I think there's always still that, again, like the normie mainstream medicine myth, salt's bad for you. I'm like, you need salt for your muscles to contract. Like you need that sodium ion. That has to be there. A low salt diet is not pro health, pro metabolism in any way. At minimum, probably 3 grams a day for most people, maybe more. Yeah, if you're like a small woman, like okay, could be less than that. But I've recommended increased sodium intake for years. Everyone feels better doing that. Everyone has better workouts, whether it's lifting, whether it's endurance, running, anything cardiovascular. You need those ions.
We do indeed. And we're told by experts that they're not poorly intended. They're just repeating what they've been told. And medical science is slow to evolve because it's conservative. And I'm thankful that it's conservative, but damn if we don't get stuck parroting things that are just not the case for decades, if not longer. Like the salt and hypertension and uh, testosterone causes cardiovascular disease. It was a black box warning on testosterone for decades. And they finally pulled that off. So things are moving forward. Things really are. It's a brave new world in this respect. And there's enough TRT physicians, just plain old PCPs on TRT that there's the weight of evidence has moved over, and the FDA made the right decision to pull the black box warning off of testosterone, thankfully, because people were scared as hell and doctors were scared to prescribe it. And the black box puts you in danger as a prescribing physician.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, like the FDA gets a lot of criticism, and rightly so, but like the overall model of medicine, the way medicine is practiced today, like people have to realize it's not necessarily, as you said, it's not necessarily a conspiracy to hurt you. Yeah, I think like physicians get unfairly criticized way too often, but it's disease treatment. Yeah, it's based upon treating disease. It's interventional medicine. Uh, Medical science, as it is laid out, in school for MDs, DOs, it's not oriented towards health enhancement. Like we're going to get you optimized. Like that doesn't exist. It's the orientations around here's the human body. Here's how it works. Here's how certain conditions arise. They're deleterious to the human condition. And here's how we can treat them and try to get them resolved as fast as possible at the lowest risk to ourselves, right? Since doctors also are not risk takers. They're not bro scientists like, let's try stuff and see what happens with a patient. Like that's going to get you sued if it goes wrong. You're going to lose your
It
license.
will.
They're going to do the
It
safest
will.
thing possible.
Yes, and I'm very sympathetic to that. I work with a lot of physicians, and they know better, meaning they know what they would like to do, but their risk tolerance, rightly so, is just not sufficient. And then you've got some guys that are like doing the sails to the wind. I'm going to do this because I believe in it, but I respect both of them. I really do. And I respect the ones that are willing to take some risks and put themselves out there, that at the same time, they should be lauded in the sense that they may not be right. And they're subjecting themselves to potential prosecution. I mean, look, I could defend one of these cases pretty easily because it's going to be really hard to tie in a superphysiological testosterone dose within reason to a cardiovascular, then especially considering that man didn't get there. His cardiovascular system didn't fall apart because he went on TRT. It fell apart because he started eating like shit when he was 13. But it's still time and depositions, and he's got to hire a lawyer, and we may have to go to court. So I'm cognizant of the physician wanting to keep his practice in order, look after his patients to the best of his ability, and I know where they're coming from. It's just nice that people are willing to take this upon themselves to do their own in some respects. That doesn't mean ditch your doctor. Keep your doctor. Your doctor has valuable insight to provide. At the same time, we have the tools and the knowledge and the anecdote, and you can read if you're willing to put the time in it, to where you can take a lot of your health into your own hands. And if you're willing to source on your own, you can do that. There are very safe boutique underground labs out there that provide pharmaceutical grade products, if not better than you would get at the TRT clinic. And I would very much like to see more TRT clinics going online that provide a non-allopathic version where they literally charge the money, sit down and do a consult like I do, or like you would do, and spend 2 hours with that patient. Go through everything and educate them so that not only are they safe, but they know the how, why, of everything that they're doing, it'll be magnificent. Again, I feel like we're right on the precipice of a great health move forward in all respects. Mental, physical, spiritual.
Yeah, the tools now available to people to, I don't know if I want to use the term be your own doctor, but to be your own medicinal guide and to heal yourself or to enhance yourself, they're just unparalleled. Yeah, really at any point in history, like this cliche term to say, but it's true. The body of knowledge we have now, and then even things like the LLM models, the ability to assess your own blood work or just to look up lab markers and know what they mean. And obviously, you have a plethora of experts available online, so much free information, high quality information at that. The only barrier is your own really curiosity.
Yes, and people are becoming more curious and exercising the agency, rightly so, to be able to ask the questions, do the research. There's 1,000 of us who are willing to help on Twitter, where you shoot somebody a DM and they'll give you their best guess. And they're not consulting to you, but at the same time, if you send 10 DMs, and I encourage people to send me DMs, I try to answer every single one of them. I can't do a full panel blood review and provide a protocol, but I can answer a question and maybe they shoot you a DM and you answer a question and then Antidoc answers a question and Ellie out of England answers a question. Then they can synthesize the data together that they've gotten from a couple of us and then they can make their decision, maybe just throw it out on the Twitter. Again, God, Twitter is just such a fine clearinghouse. It's what Reddit was supposed to be, and Reddit have turned into a cesspool of bitterness for some reason. And it's a shame because there was a lot of data there for a long time.
Yeah, I was never a Reddit user. Like, obviously, it's a huge website. It's one of the biggest in the world, right? Biggest, I think it's like top five, something like that. And there are some great forums on there, but the management over the years, it has degraded in quality in multiple ways. I think now all the great conversations happen over on X since it's an open forum, like as you said, and the cream does in fact rise to the top, and you can talk to people directly. You can talk to people directly, and you can answer questions directly. And I think all of us do some kind of AMA something now at this point where we'll just let people ask and we'll answer. And there's obviously no barriers placed on the information or in the fact that we can't customize anything, not know anything about you. But the discourse is unmatched.
And it's kind. It truly is kind. We like to fuck with each other and shit talk at the same time. I believe for the most part, what I see in Twitter is well intended. And, the troll, somebody's trolling and I see them doing it with any consistency, I just mute them. I'll block them. Like, I just don't need to see it on my timeline. There's plenty of good information. Sometimes I'll see a little account with no followers, 3 followers. I don't care. I want to look at their feed and I'll scroll through there and there's a nugget of wisdom in there. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's magnificent. Your account's too big to probably do that with the frequency I do. But you were early on Twitter. I know that you've run across accounts that have provided you benefits. Some guy he just got some autistic fixation on some little thing that he knows backwards and forwards.
Oh, those are the best people. Those are the absolute best.
I don't want to loop Grim Hood in here because he's got a nice big account, but I think you follow Grim. If you want to know about thyroid and some esoteric weirdness, what a great follow. Oh my gosh. That guy's got a wealth of knowledge, and his Twitter has been put together for, God, like a decade now, and he speaks all about thyroid and all manner of folk healing and optimization with regards to thyroid and other things, and he's a great follow. There's just so many. I'm a guy. It would take me 3 hours to list the ones that I've gained incredible insight from. And I don't always have to agree, but that's not the point. I take the data that I receive, compare it to what I know and believe, and then try to smooth that data to provide the best counsel I can to my clients.
On that note, Leos, I think we're coming up on like the 2-hour mark. I know my son is wondering what's going on. But I can keep talking to you for another 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yeah, I feel like I blinked. I looked at the clock and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Going for
So I'm gonna have you on again for sure. I know people are gonna have questions. Well, I'll release this podcast and they'll be like, "Why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you ask that? What about this?" But there'll definitely be a part 2. But where can people find you if they want to work with you? Like throw out everything you got for all of that.
So I am on Twitter only right now. I have a TikTok, but it's my age. Maybe it's too everything moves. I much prefer the written word. But I'll be moving on to TikTok. I'm Silver Fox Leo on TikTok. I'm Silver Fox Leo on Instagram, but there's not much there yet. There will be moving forward because I need to branch out into different platforms. I just owe it to myself and I owe it to my future clients. But mainly I'm on Twitter. I'm at Bowtied HRT, and I, would love to have people join in and follow and participate and provide their knowledge so that we can all work together moving forward on all of this stuff and share what we've got. It's the best place in the world.
Awesome. And then, one company I want to give a shout out. I want to use your affiliate code for this. I know you recommend Vanguard a lot for blood work, and they do a fantastic job with like custom panels and individual tests. So for any listeners who are like, you want to work with Leo, you want to start getting labs done, check out Vanguard. I'll put that in the show notes. And what's your code? I don't think you have one for Vanguard, if I'm correct.
I do. It's vanguardperform.com. And we put a bunch of labs for both men and women. You can select different panels if you want to add on to any of those panels we put together. And I know the owner personally, if you have any issues with it, because the blood lab companies are not the most, we're a good one, but at the same time, we're still going through Quest. So if you have any issues, my DMs are open. And I can get on the phone with the owner really quickly to make sure that your portal works properly. So my code there is SFL10. Like Silver Fox Leo with number 10.
Awesome. All right.
Hey, Jack,
you're talking
pleasure.
Likewise. This was killer. There's more things I want to ask you, but I want to respect your time. And then I got some family and property stuff to finally get to. But we'll definitely do this again. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, and we will talk again soon. Adios.
Adios.